Tom, you ready? Sorry, usually I cue you up first. All right. Good evening, welcome. Today is Monday, April 8th. This is a special meeting of the Cranston City Council. At this time, I will ask the clerk to please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Present.
Councilwoman Manzulli,
Here.
Councilwoman Jermaine, Councilman Donegan,
Present.
Councilman Campiano,
Present.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Present.
Councilman Wall,
Here.
Council Vice President Vargas, Council President Marino.
Present. Okay. At this time, we will hold our public hearing for public comment on the budget for the fiscal year 2024-2025. If there is anyone in chambers or on Zoom that wishes to be heard, please state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments limited to 4 minutes. At this time, we will start within chambers.
There it is. It's on now. Madam President, members of the council, I'm here tonight to basically address two issues. Number one, I'm here to first, on behalf of the Cranston School Committee, thank each and every one of you for your unwavering support for the Cranston $40 million bond referendum. That particular bond will address, as you all know, 3 of our secondary schools, as well as several of our elementary schools in the immediate future. Madam President, I want to thank you especially because I know for a fact that you received several calls from both governmental and non-governmental agencies, and each time they walked away with a very positive attitude because of your input. So I'm here to say thank you as well. The second issue, of course, naturally is your economic corridors that you've addressed in the past and want to address in the future. The Patuxent Village project and both the Ralph Street project, as you all know, have revitalized the entire neighborhood, and economic growth has taken place over the years. It's money that is well spent. The issue I want to address, however, is the Knightsville project. If I may give you a little history on that particular project. When I was first elected to the Cranston City Council back in 1979, the mayor at that time, Ed Dupree, addressed that particular corridor, economic corridor. However, he addressed it from the Knightsville Eatery Square to the church. As you well know, you see the sidewalks that are there are uplifting. The trees, of course, had to be replaced, and of course, the road has to be repaved. Like I said, that's over 45 years ago. So that particular corridor certainly needs attention in the immediate future. You've done phase 1, which was Eatery Park. Phase 2 naturally takes you from Ravenna Street to Randall Street. However, phase 3 is crucial as well, because that was never addressed. From the church down to Sprague Mansion was never addressed in that particular period of time. So I'm here tonight to show support for all 3 phases of the Knightsville project, and hopefully in the immediate future, that will be on your agenda as well for approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Louis Umberto. I own Lou Umberto's Italian Kitchen. I may not speak as well as Mayor Traff, but I just wanted to also come and support the finishing of phase 3 in Knightsville. Mayor Traff has a lot of history in Knightsville, but what I believe I bring is a lot of future. We've been open for 7 years. And I've made it my home, and I think that as far as businesses go during the day, I think we bring the most foot traffic in the area. And I really hope to stay there for a really long time and grow my business. And what we've encountered is a lot of our parking is the street parking. And a lot of the issues that I've had at least 10 older people fall on the sidewalks, younger people fall on the sidewalks. Me and my father one of us goes to work at 4:30 in the morning every morning. we can't see, we park, we park on the street also. That's, we have a little issue going into the work. He's 62 years old, 63 years old. Going into work, sometimes he's had issues walking into. So that's one thing, but as far as the revitalization, it's been amazing. But I do think the core of the neighborhood of Knightsville is from the church to Randall. And hopefully with everything happening at the Cranston Print Works, it just continues, and we invite a walkable little town that people can enjoy. And again, I just hope to bring a great future in Knightsville and hope to stay there for a long time. And I pay taxes and do what I need to do. And I just hope that everything comes back and people benefit from that. So that's it. Thank you.
My name is Ray Sinapi. I live at 65 Calvary Street, right actually across the street from Lou Umberto's. So I drive to the end of my street. I can't get out. I hate this guy's business. But anyways, I love that this guy's here tonight because that's what it needs. You got people from the Randall Manor coming to this guy's place. You got people from the Knightsville Manor, people going to church that walk the streets, that walk the sidewalks. I think it should be done. That's pretty much it, I think. Trav said it all. This guy said it all. Thank you.
There being no one else in chambers that wishes to be heard. Tom, is there anyone on Zoom?
There is no public comment.
There being no other public comment at this time, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Councilman Plaskas?
Thank you,
Do you have
Madam
a point?
President. I actually have one question. I had sent some emails and correspondence that were sent to me for testimony for today. Can we add those to the record? Can we take a vote on those?
Yeah, that's, do you remember how many approximately were sent? Do you have a list?
I have a list. I can read it.
All right.
For the names of who sent it in, and I sent it to Rose, and Rose forwarded it to all of us. Is
Yeah,
that
why
okay?
don't you just, if that way, just for clarity purposes, so we make sure they're all captured in
So
the record.
I'll
Thanks.
make a motion to put on the record the emails for public testimony that were sent today that were forwarded to all of you. They were from Ed Panicia, Salitro's Bakery, Father Cisco, St. Mary's Church, Knightsville Neighborhood Group, Tom DeSeo, Joseph Agresti, Greg Spumuli from Cafe Eatery, and Ryan Nautilillo, and I hope I didn't forget anybody.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mazzulli,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan, Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes. And now at this time, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? There being none, clerk. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No nays? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.
Everyone. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Special Finance Committee budget hearing for tonight, Monday, April 8th. Clerk, if you could, please take a roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Present.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Present.
Councilman Campiano,
Present.
Councilman Paplaskas,
Present.
Councilman Wall,
Here.
Council Vice President Vargas, Councilman Donegan,
Present.
Council President Marino.
Present.
The first item on the docket is ordinance 032402. I'd like to entertain a motion to take the docket out of order so we can save that to the end so we can get the director.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please take a roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Council President Marino.
Yes.
All right, the first item then that we will go to is the Police Department, Animal Control and Harbor Master. I don't know if Director or the Chief would like to start with any comments, and then I'll open it up for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, well, first, relative to all the departmental budgets, just an overarching generalization. The budget is predicated on the salary side, on any settled collective bargaining agreements, in this case with the police union. Later, we'll get to the fire department. Once again, those salaries are predicated on the collective bargaining agreements. The contributions with are what's required by state, and then overarching with our public safety unions, the ARC payment for the closed pension system and the OPEB funding is pursuant to or prescribed by the respective ARC payments. The rest of the budgetary line items are predicated on estimates based on what the information we have, what we believe will happen in the future. And they should be looked at as estimates as we go through line by line. I had a conversation with the council's auditor about the merits of it, just a quick straight line versus annualizing, but there are different methodologies, and I'm not going to go line by line if someone says a straight line approach. That being said, the mayor's FY 2025 budget recommendation to the city council for the police department is in the amount of $29,263,245. That's an increase over last year's appropriation in the amount of $29,025,761. So with that basic overview, I would open it back up to any questions that the council may have.
All right. Chief, thank you for being here. I'll start with a few questions, but first, I just want to acknowledge the work and dedication that the police department, yourself, the entire police department show to our community. I think I speak for all of us when I say how fortunate and lucky we are to have such a strong department here, and one that we're all proud of. So thank you. I have two brief questions on the, I think they're brief, on the expense side. So if it's all right, what we'll do is we'll start with questions on expenses, and then we'll flip over to the revenue side just to kind of keep it expenses first, go to revenue. On the expense side, it is it's the overtime line item. For the fiscal year 25 budget, it's remaining at 1.5 million. When I'm looking at the 2024 actuals, they're annualized. It's currently running at about 1.4, but annualized, it's a little over 2 million. So I just kind of wanted to, ask why is it remaining at 1.5? Is that realistic for next year?
First, I'll defer to the chief on that, but behind the scenes on, the chief's budget for overtime, there are certain aspects of that overtime budget which we are changing our accounting practices. As you'll hear from the independent auditors as they come in, there are certain aspects that they get grant reimbursements. So for the ones that are processed through the payroll system, those will be coming out of both the revenue and the expense side of the budget in terms of the reimbursement from the feds. So that is one of the answers before on a financial basis. The second thing is, this budget has been coined the austerity budget, and every department had to, I don't want to say shared sacrifice, but there were certain things that no department, got everything they wanted. So this was one of the areas we cut back in terms of providing appropriation that is reasonable, or from a financial perspective, reasonable, and it's within the governing auspices of no tax increase and no use of ARPA. So besides that, and I'm not going to manage the police department, so I'll turn it back over to the chief.
Thank you. Yes, so we've been operating 9 officers down, and last year, we have 6 in the academy right now. They've been in the academy for close to 4 months. They'll be graduating on May 24th. So having 6 officers down, having difficulty replacing them sooner. There's only 2 police academies a year. That results in overtime. So that's where most of the overtime, that's why it's tracking a little bit higher than it normally would. So once those 6 officers come on in May, they'll be on the street trained, and we'll have only 3 vacancies at that point, not counting the 5 vacancies by contract that are held open as a result of the union contract. So we should be in good shape. I believe the projection that we came up with should be accurate for next year.
Thank you, Chief. And I will acknowledge over the 5 previous fiscal years that have closed, the average is just under 1.3. So we do expect 6. So there are 9 out right now. 6 will be coming on in May once they go through the academy, and so we'll only be down 3. Okay. Is that reflected in the salary schedule, or the 6 new? I see it. So that's only going up $100,000, and I would imagine just with step increases, if 6 more are also coming on.
Mr. Chairman, the salary schedule reflects all positions that are currently filled, including, so that the people in the academy are filled. And the chief said 3 vacancies. I believe that the budget has 2 vacancies, so we have a difference of a position, but the budget for salaries reflects all current personnel and any vacancies that were funded this year that were carried over into next year's budget. So yes, it's the full complement with their salaries.
Thank you. The other question I have on an expense line item is, where am I? It's line item 53205. It's computer expenses. This is, so the proposed budget is 100,000. That's down from 135. The annualization for 24 is running at like 47,000. So I guess I'm just wondering, why is this running so much lower this year compared to other years? Is there a fourth quarter purchase that's likely coming?
Some of the equipment we bought, out of this year's budget will equip some of the cruisers, going forward. So we benefit by buying sometimes in bulk. So that's why we suspect it's going to be lower, this year.
I'll open it up to the committee. Or actually, do you want to ask?
With reference to the overtime question, Colonel, I would assume the reason for the reduction in salaries going forward in the current year is the factor as the positions haven't been full and you're down the 9 staff.
Yeah, that's correct. So those positions we're not even going to be able to fill, those 3 vacancies that we're talking about. Hopefully we can get 3 good candidates, and, we expect other retirements, possibly 2 to 3 retirements. And since there's only 2 academies during the year, there actually might be experience some cost saving in salary depending on the timing of those retirements.
And what's the anticipated start date of the cadets that are in the academy currently?
They graduate on May 24th.
Thank you.
Members of the committee? Council President Marino.
Thank you, Councilman Donegan. Good evening, Colonel. Thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you and your department for all that you do every day to keep the city safe. With respect to the budget this evening, I just wanted to mention a couple of things. One is, I understand through the grant writer, I know in discussions with her, she had worked with the administration and Seth Magaziner, Congressman Magaziner, to supplement some canine, I don't believe it was was it a vehicle as well? So
There's
my
4
question to you is
vehicles.
if you can just kind of expound on when that will take effect and how that facilitates and helps your canine program.
Yes, so we received $344,000 through Congressman Magaziner in appropriations. And we have 4 aging canine vehicles that have been on the road. They have, well over 150, 160,000 miles on them. Those vehicles are very costly to replace. So that money will go towards buying 4 Chevy Tahoes, fully equipped with the canine containment system, temperature control system, computers. Basically, the entire expense will be funded with that money. So we're in the process of ordering those vehicles and getting the equipment that's needed. So as soon as we can.
Thank you. And the money to facilitate the purchase of those vehicles, is that going to expand the canine program or keep the number of officers for that program about the same?
We hope to possibly expand it. We have 1 canine officer that will be, I think his dog is ready to retire. So we plan on purchasing another dog. So we are considering that, but we may just end up with the 3 canines at the end of the day, but that's something we're looking at.
Thanks. In terms of another kind of unusual question, but I noticed the line item expense deal, I believe it's 53201, dealing with ammunition. I understand that cost can sometimes fluctuate a bit. I just want to make sure that that's on track. It's looking to be budgeted for the same that it was this past fiscal year, and if you think that that's sufficient. It was 60,000.
Yeah,
Maybe Director Zadelis.
that's been pretty steady across
Yeah.
the years, and ammunition at one point was very difficult to get, and the prices were pricing very high.
Yeah.
But it looks like the ammunition is the supply is going up, and we're able to control the cost a little bit better. But we have to fire a certain number of rounds every year, and that includes our tactical team. Our officers have to qualify, so that should be sufficient for our purposes.
I just want to make sure that you have the tools that you need in your department and the appropriate funding is appropriated there. Thanks.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Thank you. Two things, and just to piggyback on what Council President just said, I just want to thank you for your outreach when you do use the range. I know you post the times and you do reach out to neighbors in the community so that they're aware when you're using the range. So I appreciate that. My next question is kind of an old school question because we don't really talk about it anymore, but when I first got on the council, we used to all the time. Do you still have the CARES detail? And if you do, what line item do you pay that out of? Does that come out of special duty or is that comp time that officers can earn for doing that detail? I don't remember.
That comes out of the special duty line item. We do have that program and it's used heavily. And this is the time of year when we do a lot more details, a lot more speeding complaints come in and that's where we divert the officers on overtime to work that and do intensive speed enforcement, stop sign enforcement, things of that nature.
So when we see an officer out doing enforcement in a school zone or Cranston West or Cranston East, that's probably the CARES detail, just doing traffic enforcement.
Yes, very likely. So the officers usually work 4-hour blocks. We have a list of locations where complaints have come in and their entire focus is to conduct intensive enforcement in those zones.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chief.
Councilman Ferry.
Thank you. And again, thank you for your fine job that you do. I'm asking a question in reference to line 53503, 53503, injured on duty Blue Cross. And if you go back 4 years, it's been as low as 108,000 and as high as 180,000. And it might be on track maybe this year to be less, but why would it be only what chance is there of it only being $60,000? Is that a real number? If you could just explain it to me.
Through the chair to the counselor, last year in FY23, there was an exceptional case that was credited to that line item in terms of our responsibility. So last year was a little bit higher in terms of expenses. This year through December, it was tracking roughly half of it. So we're, projecting that will carry through to next year. So that's one of the estimates we made, that what we're seeing this fiscal year will continue into next year, the 60 grand.
But even though it's never been less than 108, you still think it could go down to 60?
If I can go back and look at multiple years, yes, that's our estimate right now.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Wall.
And I'll also echo sentiments of my colleague. Thank you for what you do, Colonel. I got to really, because I spent so much time on the school committee, I saw the school safety initiative. It's group number 51. I didn't bring my glasses tonight. 51118. All right, and I'm noticing that at 106, $106,000. My question is twofold. First, are you at liberty to discuss what type of things are paid out of that line?
Yes, so officers are assigned every single day on an overtime basis to check into all the area schools, conduct random checks, basically walk into the school, interact with the children, interact with the staff, but more importantly, be visible, have a visible presence. So there's officers on detail every day, and that's where that money comes out of, that line item.
And so, and I know how important that is and given, how can I say this diplomatically? Given the way things are trending in the country, in the world, I would expect instead of seeing that line last year went down, it seemed to be trending up from 0, which amazed me, a couple of years ago, back to where it was before, 106 the last budget, and it's flatlined now. I would think that number would be higher, but probably, I would assume that would be trending up, and maybe it's just a commentary, not a question.
Well, it's a set amount of money that's put aside for that every year, and officers do take that detail often because they enjoy it, but if there's other details out there and not every day are they able to take it, so if we're not using the entire amount of the money, that's probably the reason why.
Thank you. Councilwoman Rensley.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Colonel. Thank you for being here. I am just curious as to where the flock cameras and where body cameras fall in this budget, which lines they sit in.
So the body worn cameras is 100% reimbursed. So there's no money that necessarily comes out. My understanding, the money is expended, and Mr. Zadelis can explain what line item, but we're quickly fully reimbursed through the state program and the Department of Justice for the first year. The flock cameras, we have used forfeiture money in the past to pay for those, but typically maintenance contracts covers the cameras going forward. And we just signed I think it was a 3 or 4 year contract extension to lock in, the positive rates that we have because the prices are going up for flock cameras. But again, a very successful program leading to many arrests, missing persons being located. And you can see a lot of cities and communities have followed suit. We were one of the first departments in the state to utilize these cameras.
Okay, excellent. So if I'm understanding correctly, that's in maintenance contracts, and so that's funded. Too good to pay for that as long as we keep that line full for the next 3 to 4 years. And the body cameras, did you say that that's reimbursed the first year, or is it going to continue to be reimbursed year after year, or?
Sorry, it's a 4 year program, and we're hoping that when we get to the end, that the state's going to continue the program because it's been very successful as well.
Okay,
So
excellent.
the multi-year program with full reimbursement.
Okay, fully reimbursed, so it's,
Tom, do you know?
don't
line
see it
item?
here anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Equipment. Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Chief and Director, on the maintenance contract line item, it's for fiscal year 24. It's running about a little over $18,000 under budget. Are there contracts that we are obligated to that full 300,000, or do you think could it be lower?
Chairman, I believe there is, but I cannot cite it. Full contract, including their computers, so the timing of them, they have numerous maintenance contracts. So I believe there may be, but can I cite one today? No.
Would you be willing to get back to me on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm always willing to get back to you on that one.
And you always do, and it's appreciated. Thank you, Director. Are there any other members that have questions about expense side for the police department? Budget Auditor DeMayo?
Just a point of information. Do the cadets currently get paid by the city while they're in the academy? And do they get paid at a reduced rate?
Yes, they do. I don't know exactly what the rate is, but it is set via the contract.
So they are listed as an individual on the list of employees within the big book, right? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Moving to the revenue side, still on group 1202. I'll start line item 53202, police detail cars. This is proposed at 900,000 for fiscal year 25. It's a 128% increase from $395,000. For fiscal year 24, when you annualize it, it's at 740,000, which is still, it's a considerable way off from that $900,000 number. So I'm just, looking for some insight on how we arrived at that number.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. Okay, the mid-year point was, I'm gonna say 500,000. And as you know, during the winter months, you really don't do much on details that require cars. So in terms of annualizing it and factoring it up from next year, what we've seen is not only the construction projects throughout the city requiring vehicles has increased dramatically. You also need to take it into consideration with previous COVID money coming out, being thrown into infrastructure, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act, which had a lot of infrastructure work being done. So the combination of the trend we've seen to date, continuing through this year into next year, increasing or factored for the federal money that has date-specific work timelines. So yes, we believe that factors in multiple facets of construction work that will require the use of cruisers. In addition to that, finance in the police department, there is a receivable balance out there that we're going to aggressively collect. So those multiple facets account for the increase that we're seeing to date and we project into the future.
And that general approach regarding some of the money that's out there, I assume that's also going to be reflected in other building or development dependent revenue line items?
Through the chair to the council, yes, as you see adjustments up in other frontline departments, yes, you'll see that basic theme carrying forth with other departments, sir.
Turning to line item 43204, it's admin fee outside details. Again, is that the same?
Mr. Chairman, that is a very similar on-point explanation, sir.
And the last question I have is on line item 44500, that's VIN verification. Also proposed to go up 150,000 to 500,000, annualized this year at 460,000. So just wanted some insight on that. Where's the 500,000?
So the Providence Police Department, I believe, shut their VIN station down. And other police departments are really not wanting to do VIN checks anymore. So with our proximity close to the DMV, we have lines of cars all the way out to the street every single day. So we do project that's going to be much higher this year, next year, I should say.
Chief, when you say much higher, and that's great. So if it's running at 460,000 this year, if it's, that's a $40,000 increase from that number proposed for 25. Could it possibly go higher than that?
Sorry, I've got to get used to keeping my finger on a button. Okay, Mr. Chairman, through February, we were at 493,000. I just want to make sure we're all, I'm sorry, Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Okay, I'm sorry, wrong line item, thank you. Yeah, 306 with 4 months to go. And if you watch the trend, it's been continually upticking every month, as the chief said. Again, we're just projecting out that trend continuing into next year, the uptick in the activity down at Phoenix Ave. So it's an estimate, just like anything else, based on what we're seeing, sir.
When did Providence Station? The trend upwards is,
My understanding is in the last few months. And then also, new car dealers can do some level of VIN checks. But they have to go through the police department to run the VIN numbers through. To expect revenue to come in. Anybody could call our department and have that check done. So we expect more revenue from that as well.
thank you, Chief. Director, so if we were to just take, January, February, March numbers and annualize that, what would that give us? So if we solely looked at numbers post Providence closing their station, what number does that give us?
If I may, this is one of those ones that, again, straight line won't do it because if you think about it, you don't know when someone's going to be buying a car. If the methodology on the spot, I'd like to think about what you're proposing, just taking those 3 months, and when I get you the maintenance answer, just how I would get back to you with a trending with how you're trying to do it. So if I can ask your indulgence on that one, when I get you the maintenance one, I'll get you would that be a methodical trending, if I could?
Thank you, Director. Budget Auditor?
Colonel, would it be a fair assessment to say that if you were doing about 100 VIN checks a day with the increase of the other departments not using it, the Cranston will go up to about 150 VIN checks per day?
I'd say that's reasonable for sure.
Just with that assessment, it means it's going to go up 50% from previous year. In essence, that would cover the
Yeah.
increase, that's all.
Yes. I mean,
A simple way to quantify it.
but if I may, to the councilors, I'll still get back with that specific.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Paplaskas?
Thank you. Colonel, do you know if Providence intends to reopen that VIN station or is it closed permanently? I remember it always staffed there on Ernest Street.
I believe it's closed permanently. It's just, they were having civilians staff it, and I just don't know if financially it was, something they wanted to continue with. We're glad to pick up that business.
Yeah, I know we are too, but now that we're talking about it, Providence might realize they're losing the business and their budget hearings come up, they reopen it because they hear us talking about it. So I'd hate to, try to change this revenue number and hurt our business.
Council will just, if I may, we'll just blame it on Council Donegan.
There you go. And I have another question, on the cars. Every year, the cost of cars are going up. Have we gone up in our rate for the detail cars to match the rate that, the cars are going up and the cost for us to replace them and do maintenance? And how long, do you know if that rate's been the same for a long time, or should we ask for more
We
money?
went up, I don't know exactly when it was. We have gone up. And we do track what other departments are charging for vehicles. So, I mean, that's something to consider with the price of gas and oil and the wear and tear, but we have gone up not too long ago.
Okay, because I know we spend a lot of money on our fleet and our fleet looks good. And if we're gonna have nice cars sitting on the side of the road, the utility should pay for it. They're not shy about cutting into our freshly paved streets, so, we should get the money back somehow. Thank you.
Are there any other members that have questions on expense? I'm sorry, on revenue? Thank you. At this time, we're going to allow the chief to step down. If there are no, oh, we still. It's a good thing someone's paying attention. We'll start with, on the expense side, animal control. Yes.
The federal and state grant, well, I'll start over. Good evening, Chief. My apologies for being late. Stuck in traffic. Just on the revenue side, the $250,000, and my apologies if this was already asked or not. Is that pretty much guaranteed, or is this just, we're putting $250,000 that we're assuming we're gonna be receiving?
If I may, referring back to Counselor Renzulli's question relative to the vests and the grant, the multi-year with the grant, the 250 is one that is going to be, I think, 2 years worth of reimbursements because of a timing issue of when we put it, a reimbursement into the state to go to the Department of Justice for reimbursements of the vests. So that's 2 years. And yes, the first year, I believe it was 137,000. The second year, we're doing about another 135. So the 250 is expenses we know of to date. So that is should be an actual number, ma'am.
Okay, and how many vests does that cover? Is that the entire, I assume not the entire department, correct? Okay, and that's why, because it's staggered, it goes based on like
Volume.
folks who received it, then don't get it the next year, and this is why you stagger that to 50? Okay. Is there any other grants that are being worked on as well that you foresee coming in as revenue?
We are working on a grant to buy new communication radios for the department. So we are working on submitting that through federal appropriation money. So we're hoping to get that. And as you know, Congressman Magaziner just gave us a grant for $344,000. And we have our crisis intervention team, which is fully funded with a $500,000 grant over a 2-year period. So been very successful on that front. Thanks to Ms. Indoja and the efforts of the Captain Parker and other people inside the department, Captain Dutra. We're always looking for grant money.
All right, thank you. If I have any questions in terms of the expenditure side, I'll just watch the Zoom later on, and I can always, I'm assuming, email. And I know you've always been really good in responding to that. Any questions? So thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Of course. All right, at this time, we're going to turn our attention on the expense side to animal control. That is group number 1203. Does anyone have any questions on animal control expense? Going once, seeing none. All right, we will turn our attention to animal control revenue side. Any questions there? Council Vice President?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I think that I couldn't open the attachment, so if that was sent in terms of where we are year to date, my apologies on the 2024. If anybody has that handy, I'd be happy to hear where we are. Revenue side of animal control?
The numbers I have is the actuals for line item 43300, animal shelter impound fees. The actuals are 1,386. That annualizes to $2,079, which is $921 under the budget of $3,000 for 24.
Got it, up into the third quarter. Correct, right?
Through 8 months, through February.
I'm sorry, through February. Okay. And where do you think we're gonna end up by the end of the fourth quarter?
Through the chair to the counselor, in the range. And in terms of this budget, the smaller amounts, weren't scrutinized as much as the larger revenue drivers. So on this one, a range, a couple $100 either way.
Okay, thank you.
There any other questions on? Yes, Council President Marino.
Yeah, Councilman Donegan, thank you. I was gonna mention this at the end of the meeting, but I'll mention it now because it kind of segues into the question I'm gonna ask. Is just, I know we're at the start of this whole process, and we appreciate the hard work that you put in, Director Zadelis, leading up to this time of year. But just as a reminder for the members of council, for each budget meeting, if we could have a printout and an email of the actual budget to date, how the revenues and expenditures are tracking for each department for the night of the meeting. I know I had mentioned it to you, and I know that you're happy to oblige.
Yeah.
Yep.
Madam, through the chair to the council president, absolutely. And the month of March has not been closed. So for for the next hearing, which is 2 days from now, I just may put a qualifier on it that this is, just posted without any adjustments. But I'd be more than happy to send those out in advance of the meetings. I can say with no uncertain terms by Saturday, the month should be closed, so I, feel more comfortable with a totally clean revenue for March for Saturday, but I think we can get up-to-date numbers through March for Thursday and get those out in advance.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. My question was going to be with respect to the hospitalization for animal control as an expense. But I see it looks like it's tracking according to the end of February, it's tracking consistent with the numbers that you're proposing, which is why it's there. I apologize. I didn't mention it during the expenditure talk of animal control, but it took me a little while to scroll down and find it on the February pages. So thank you.
If there are no further questions on animal control, we will turn to group number 1902, Harbor Master. We'll start with the expenses. I have no questions. There are no proposed changes here. Departmental expenses are running at $0 for this year. Does he intend on using anything, or maybe, I know it's a $323 million budget, but are there $500 of savings there that we could work with somewhere else?
Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely correct. We can circle back with I assume they have, albeit de minimis expenditures, but I found it odd that this was under, since I got here, under the police department, and I personally have had no contact with the harbor master direct, but it'd be an interesting phone call that I will make.
I will say that he uses our boat, so our boat is in storage right now. So usually any expenses take place as soon as we get the boat in the water, and has to find out there's an engine issue or needs to be some maintenance to be done. So that's why we usually don't spend the money till around sometime in the spring.
Thank you. Are there any Council Vice President?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I ask this every year, and actually you just brought it up, and it was on the boat, and I was just going to ask you, I know last year, based on my notes that I was reading over the weekend, it was that the amount was to purchase, I think, a potential new boat or some sort of maintenance. That was all done. So the remaining uncollected balance, if I'm reading this right now, is 2,125 as of February. It was budgeted to about 3,000. Oh, sorry, that was a salary. Sorry, it was budgeted 1,000. So are we over budget? Am I looking at this correctly? Or am I looking at my expenses? Hold on. This is my expense. Director, if you have it there, if you can tell us where we are in terms of the expense, we budgeted 1,000. Where are we on, I'm just trying to scroll down and go to the expense side. Yes,
Haven't spent that. They have
nothing
not
out of that
spent-
$1,000.
No.
Okay,
And
You-
as the chief was mentioning, the timing of when their expenses occur,
it's when he takes a boat out.
Yeah, so the boats in the winter, it's on a trailer up at the training division. And we'll be putting the boat in the water soon, so usually we have to tune it up and, it may need some minor repairs, so usually don't incur those expenses until soon, in the next month, we'll have the boat in the water at Johnson and Wales.
What did we spend last year? Did we really spend the full 1,000? We didn't draw down.
Nope.
Okay. Okay. And so, Chief, when does the boat go back out? Would you be able to provide us an update, actually, Chief, if you don't mind, once the boat out, if there's any expenses that you're gonna encounter between now and the end of the fiscal year?
Sure, yeah, the boat probably won't go in the water. It's all contingent on Johnson and Wales giving us the green light that their docks are in and we're able to put the boat in the water. So in the next month or so.
Okay,
just,
all right.
if I may?
Yeah.
And in terms of actual for 23, it was $3,913. 1902, if you look at the short list, page 22. Harbor Master? Sorry, I think you're down the line. That's 1902? 1902.
So 1902 Harbor Master,
So the departmental expenses, yes, 0, I stand.
all right. So, if, again, just to, if you don't mind, once the boat goes
Yeah.
out, just,
Yes, ma'am.
emailing, that would be great. And from time to time, I do speak to our harbor master, who I think does a great job. One of a kind of a character that we have. He really is very passionate about our harbor, but I'd just like to know that number. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Are there any other questions on the harbor master? Any questions on the harbor master revenue? All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your answers, and thank you for your service to the city. All right. Next, we do have municipal court. while the judge is being, and everyone is getting settled, please note the document that is being passed around. I would like to take a motion to place this on the record.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, clerk, please take a roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilman Jermaine,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas, Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas. Yes. Councilman Donegan,
Yes.
Council President Reno.
Yes.
Okay, we are looking at Group 1107 Municipal Court. I have one question on the expense side. Well, I guess before we start with any questions, is there anything you would like to open with or state on behalf of the department before we begin?
Well, we're here this evening to discuss, obviously, our request versus what's been offered to the court. I think we have some figures that can support our requests, and myself and Miranda are here to answer any questions, and also our former administrator, Elizabeth Bettis, is with us this evening, who has many years of institutional knowledge and has offered to share some answers if we need to. So basically where we are right now.
Thank you. The one question that I will start with is on line item 52510, advance payment to the state of Rhode Island. I'm sure this question has been answered before, and I apologize. What exactly is that line item? Is it the tickets, the payment that has to be? Okay. So I know we'll get to expenses, and thank you, because that's what I thought the answer was. That is being reduced from 72,000 to 45,000, which, based on the annualization of 24, makes sense. But the traffic fines revenue is projected to go up so much. Wouldn't there be a correlation between the two? If one is going to go up, wouldn't the other go up, or is that?
That one about. Counselor, one thing new compared to all other years is the conversion of parking tickets. In terms of a revenue, which I had no basis to compare it to, is if the procedure, could you better explain the procedure before I talk about Miranda, you gotta speak into them.
Trying to answer. It's okay. So from a parking ticket, there are a series of assessments that are added. It doubles, it triples, and it eventually gets turned into a traffic ticket against the license. So it can go from a parking ticket to a traffic ticket.
But then in terms of how you're coupling in issuing the collection procedure you're using that we spoke about,
And
converting it over to,
an owner's liability, yeah, which, yes, turns into the traffic ticket.
yes, so there,
Owner's liability, yep.
yes, so that's the basis for the increase, and that doesn't go for this, that's our revenue.
Yep, so if we pay on the parking ticket and dismiss the traffic ticket, it is our.
Thank you. Any other questions on the expense side? Council Vice President.
So, that's this one. Got a quick question. They might be, they might go hand in hand with expenditures, but with revenue. If we look, so your part-time help on the expenditure side has gone up a little bit. $40,000 for FY '25 is what's being requested. It was down. And then I'm looking at the year to date, the expenditures document that director has provided to us. And looking at that line item, this is part-time help again. It looks like, are we going over that line item in expenditures? We've spent 32,300. So is that the reason why the $40,000 is being projected to be added?
Then
Two questions, if I may. Your first question was, in terms of year through the February expense, last year's budget was 32.3. To date, we are at 40, so we are trending over in FY '23. In terms of the request for next year, we did increase it in terms of up to 40, but in a conversation with the final budget, it did not meet the request of the department that they were looking for. So this funding request is lower than what was requested by the department for the year. So in terms of this budget, that is an issue with trending, that this part-time help is lower than what was requested. And this is something we will work with the department to ensure that their existing staff is properly carried through the end of the fiscal year.
And so, so as I'm looking at here, so we're over budget, correct? As of now?
Through the chair to council, could you ask that question one more time?
So where are we year to date on that? We're not at 32,000. We allocated
you're right.
32,300.
Through February, they were at 40 grand.
They were already at 40.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's part-time help, clearly.
That's,
Now, does that not include, well, I have a question, but before I ask that, let me ask a different question. What was the request of the department initially?
indulge me for a minute, Counselor.
I can answer that. It's in the document that 62,000.
Thank you.
Thank you, very helpful. So if we're over in that department, I just had a quick question. There's also a vacancy in that department, is there not?
On full-time,
On part-time, we're on part-time. It says court translation clerk vacant. The full-time? Okay. So it's that's a full-time job position.
The full-time slot interpreter has not been filled, but we do have a part-time who serves as an interpreter during court hours, and we're not interpreting this clerical work.
Okay, so that part-time, sorry, I'm just trying to understand. So it's a full-time position, but it's vacant, but we have a part-time,
not funded
it's not,
in either, it was not funded in either year as a full-time position.
so we have two part-times that are translators?
Yes. Two translators.
And those,
Something, Elizabeth, that you wanted to add to the hair? Did you have? Interpreter?
Elizabeth, I'm sorry, do you mind coming up so they can hear you on the microphone? Is that okay? We can give you director, thank you.
So the full-time interpreter position was initially funded by the council. The next year, it was still a position that was in the court, but it was not funded. And then this upcoming year, it is also unfunded.
So unfunded. Okay. So we have we don't have any translators. I know that was not funded. Is there a request to bring in a translator?
The funding request for this fiscal year, both in terms of what we sent out in terms of full-time position, did not include funding for a full-time position.
Are the part-timers listed on here as well?
In terms of the position, no, then, in terms of the position listing, no, ma'am.
Are they normally part-time? Are they normally
Last
listed on
year,
here?
they weren't. This year, I can't speak for previous years. I can say with no uncertain terms through the chairman to the counselor. Last year, I do not believe they were. This year, they weren't. I can't speak about any budget prior to FY '24.
Okay, so would it be fair for me to say that the requests that are all coming from the department is to potentially fund a part-time translator? Full-time, I would say, actually.
Likely accept a full-time interpreter at the court. As I indicated right now, we've got an individual there who works part-time and
Is the mic on?
just to repeat, obviously, we'd love a full-time interpreter position at the court. Right now, we're utilizing, as I indicated, one of our part-timers whose hours mirror our court hours so that she is always there. And when not doing her or any interpreting work, does clerical work there. If I could just circle back to one of your earlier questions relative to where we stand with our part-time help. When the current budget, the one that's going right now, was passed, we did not have 4 part-timers. And we have 4 part-timers now, along with our 2 full-time employees over there. So the numbers from what was budgeted, 32,300, we're past that, and we will be past that as we progress to the end of the fiscal year. So that was our rationale for asking for 62,000 for part-time help. And as you can see, what was budgeted before you is 40,000 with the differential of 22,000. But we're already over last year's budget on our part-time help as of today's date as well.
And so the part-time, I'm sorry, Chairman, do you mind? Can I? Okay, so the 2 part-timers, they're part-time, but they also serve as translators? And are they certified?
Don't believe Elizabeth jump in because I mean you know them better than I. I don't believe that they're certified translators.
The reason why I'm asking is, you know, there's been a few folks who've kind of just said that the translators are not fully fluent in, for example, in Spanish. So I'm just trying to figure out what language are they translating in.
My understanding for the days that I'm there that I utilize them, and from my knowledge of speaking to staff there, is Spanish.
Do you guys, we can talk, I'm just curious in terms of testing line, but I just wanted to make sure in terms of information that is being translated is actually being translated correctly, you know, okay. I have a question, but it's more on the expenditures, sorry, on the revenue side, and I don't know, and I can hold off until we get there, but it kind of goes in line with my other question, but I'll hold off and I'll let the other council members ask their questions first before I go on to the expenditure side. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Vice President. Are there any members inside? Councilman Wall.
And excuse my ignorance, differential, I'm looking at the third line in the expenditures, differential, and, it had been first, what is it? I don't know.
Differential, my understanding, and Miranda can jump in if I'm misspeaking, is the monies that were due to Miranda from administrator of the court as well as the clerk of the court. And my understanding when she was hired was they were going to make up the difference of the two added together, administrator salary and the clerk of the court. And from her current salary to equate to that figure is a differential of $12,300. And if I could just say too, in discussing this budget the other day, it's come to our attention that she has not gotten that. So she has reached out to payroll and is working on that.
Just looking at the book, your request was, I assume, looking at the trend, it was going up. I assume your request was a bit higher than what we have budgeted here in front of us.
The differential, our request was 12,300 and they've put in 7,500.
We figured you'd stay pretty much consistent with last year's budget. It's been cut somewhat.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
12,300.
Thank you. That's it.
Councilwoman Rensley.
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding the differential, I do not understand how it's going to go down if was already, you signed something that you were supposed to get that different, what is it that we have to do? This differential is expected to be the different salary difference between two jobs that the clerk is doing. I don't think we can really lower it. It's not for different people's differentials. It's just for one differential for Miranda?
Counselor, could you repeat the?
So my question is, to Councilman Wall's point about the differential, he asked what this was exactly, and I'm understanding that it is a portion of a salary between two different jobs that Miranda is doing?
It's compensating an employee for work above and beyond what, yeah, that's correct.
Is her job going to stay the same as it was this year, or does she have less?
Through the chair to the counselor, there's two distinct issues. One, to date, I don't know what was conveyed to the incumbent on the differential amount. As Judge Coyer said, that when we were talking about it just recently, that differential has not been paid to the individual. So one thing, we are having personnel look into what the compensation should have been. And when we were putting the budget together, I have to go back and look at my notes. The request was $7,500. in terms of a differential, and I have to go back and see how we got that number. I don't know if it was the number that may have been, I don't want to use the word promised, but agreed upon. So there's one thing that we need to check on is if the incumbent was promised a differential, getting it processed and then carrying it forward for a full year. So did I, through the chair to the council, did I answer your question?
Yes, I just want to ensure that if someone is doing the work of
Yes.
between two different positions, that they're
The
compensated
addition, yes,
fairly.
yes.
And to the judge, don't quote me on this, but I recall this being an issue in past years with Elizabeth. And I don't remember if it was because the council had to put in something to make her the clerk of the court or make her there was something that's not covered here that maybe we have to do, or there was a certain qualification that she had in order to get that title. So if someone could look into that and speak about it offline to see if there's anything we need to do in order to make this happen officially, there was an issue in the past.
If I could, Chairman Donegan, to that point, we as the council did appoint her, Miranda, as the municipal court clerk, so we did everything we are to do. There's nothing further for the council to do. Thank you.
Then I would just say that if the council has done its job and to point her to the correct position, that she be compensated in the same way that her predecessor was.
Through the chair to the counselor, in a conversation, I believe it was last Friday with the judge and the staff, it was brought to my attention that the differential had not been processed, and immediately I sent something down to personnel to inquire what was the process in with the hiring, so we can correct that matter.
Thank you. I had one more question. I'm sorry, Chair. To the part-time help, Judge, did you say there were 4 positions last year when the budget was made that was only funded for 3? Can you tell me what those 3 positions are? 2 translators exclusively, and what are the other 2?
There is another part-time clerk that works there, and Elizabeth Bettis had agreed upon after she left to come back with some part-time hours to lend her knowledge and expertise to the court and assisting Miranda as she became acclimated with the court and all of its duties.
And do you anticipate that continuing through this next fiscal year?
As far as Elizabeth, yes, I hope so.
But potentially too, and if I may, Your Honor, potentially once the incumbent is more familiar, she had the incumbent had previous knowledge, so I would anticipate the hours of the 4th position eventually going down. I can't give you a number about, a number of hours.
Is that reflected here in the amount that you have put? I'm just wondering
Through
as
the
we
chair,
go.
The FY 25 budget on the 4th position anticipates less hours for the 4th position.
Okay, so is that why you would say that the ask was not completely filled?
The ask in terms of in the formulation of the final budget assumed the 4th position having, yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Council President.
Thank you, Chairman Donegan. Just had a question. The departmental expenses last budget was, I believe, reduced to the 45,000. Your request, I see from your submission this evening, is for 60,000. So it's basically would be an increase of $15,000. I assume that some of the departmental expenses are contracts, contracted rates, et cetera. Most expenses have gone up, those types of things don't go down, but I would just like to know how important it is for your department to have an increase of $15,000. Are there any particular contracts that are crucial to this increase? And the last thing I'll say, Director Zadelis, if you could, it's hard for me to tell where it's tracking. If you can just enlighten me on that in the meantime, thanks.
Okay, on departmental expenses, through February, it's 30 grand, but one of the things is, I can't say what term those payments went through. As an example, if they made a payment for a maintenance contract that paid the whole year, I don't have that. It will take some time to analyze. Did a payment that was made as in January that would take them through the end of the fiscal year. If you've already paid for that in January and you're covered, that's one where you're not getting a straight line. So, at this particular point in time, your question, I can't answer it with any certainty with their budget.
Because basically, I'm sure we all share the same concern. We just want to make sure that we're budgeting appropriately for the anticipated expenses. And if in fact they're going to be more than 45,000 and closer to the 60, then we should be sure to compensate for that in the budget.
Madam President?
Yes.
Please, if I may. Speaking with staff, I was told that Curio, which is software, is 35,000 per year. Ticket books, which is a requirement, are an over $5,000 expense. So you're at 40 right there with those two items. Pitney Bowes, and I think Miranda included in the booklet that we passed out. I think there's something there from Pitney Bowes, if I'm not. It's $4,388 to date. So, I mean, the few that are there already, I think eclipsed 45,000. So when you said how important is it, it's important because those are required expenses.
Right.
And that's where we came up with a $60,000 figure.
Thank you for that, because if those are in fact accurate expenses, which is what you've just confirmed, then that number needs to be reflective of the actual expenses because they're going to be greater than 45,000. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the expense side? Moving to revenues. On line item 42150, there's a $180,000 proposed change in traffic fines. For the 25 proposed budget is 750,000. Annualized for 24, I have is 537,000, and the average over the past 5 years has been 522. So I'm just wondering where we're getting the $750,000.
In Council, as when we opened up, the change in the procedure on collections of certain fines that they're currently under place with the increase in the conversion of certain tickets was the basis for the increase in the revenue estimate. And as I said, of all the estimates on revenues, because this is a new process in terms of activities at the municipal court, it's one that is we have no trend on. Yep.
Can I ask, the judge or the court administrator, their thoughts on that number? Just because the numbers even for this year are running low, and so I'm cautious when I see such a significant increase, especially when we don't know exactly what the projection. What I'm taking it is there are some changes procedurally that are happening. We're forecasting that it might increase revenue, but we don't really have anything to base that off of. And I don't mean that as a slight. But $180,000 is a pretty significant increase.
Through the chair to the counselor, in going through with the department, in terms of the change in their procedure, yes, that revenue estimate, aggressive is my estimate. And again, there is no methodology that I can say, if you take this plus this, it's gonna yield that much more money. So yes, would I say it's an aggressive estimate that I would like, had more information in doing the projection? Yes, but it is an estimate, sir. And aggressive.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just address that too.
Yes, Your Honor.
My review of the figures reveal that the 2024 budgeted revenue was 586,000. And my understanding from discussions with the court staff is right now, close to today's date, we are at about 410,000. And our goal probably be about 500,000. So 767,000 from 500 is, to quote the gentleman, aggressive.
Thank you, Your Honor. On building code, so building code I see is being, that's remaining, or that's being reduced down to zero. All other fines is being bumped up, 7,000. Is there a connection between those two? Is the plan, I guess, maybe on the financial side, is the plan to combine 52151 and 52152? Is that what it is, or?
Mr. Chairman, if you look at actuals, there are, I don't know in hindsight, for FY 24, the actuals for building code fines is zero. If you look at all other fines, I don't know if they've had a change, a change of how we've been accounting for things, but what we've seen is everything other than traffic fines are being classified in the account 42152. So that's where our, prospective revenues are projected to be seen.
Director, and I know that we'll discuss this more when we get to the inspections department.
I'm sorry, if I may interrupt you, in terms of projections, again, the budget was for 10,000. So 3/4 of the year, we've seen $8,000. Again, it's a projection going forward. The budget for FY 24 is 10,000. So in line, probably a little more than 10,000 should be or could be realized this fiscal year. Again, a projection going out to 17,000 is ours based on trends. It's not a straight line trend, Counselor.
Thank you, Director. On the building code fines, and I'll say this again when we get to the buildings department. I think it's preposterous that and not that this isn't a fault of the court. It's preposterous that in a city our size, there are 0 fines that have been collected for building code violations. When I know personally, I've sent and called in issues on mold, lead, all sorts of unsafe housing. And to see that people aren't being held accountable for those issues is detrimental to people's health in this city. And people only need to look at the Providence Journal, the Boston Globe, the Public's Radio, from the WPRI from the past week to see these issues here in our city. So, and it's not your fault, Director. It's not the court's fault. And we'll bring it up again in buildings. But someone needs to send a message to that department that they need to hold people responsible because they're not doing it. And that's all I'm going to say. If there are any other members of the committee that have a question. Council Vice President.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, you're right on. That's exactly what I was actually going to say on that because of what we've seen in the paper and just in general, we often have conversations in terms of, properties that are coming in of which the inspections department should be doing. And I'm not saying they are, but maybe more so of their due diligence and how we're collecting that. We can address that when they come. But Director, can I just ask you a question? What is our overall, in the budget that was proposed, what is the revenue that you're seeing being proposed for FY25?
For this department or?
Or
generally?
overall for this whole city?
323 million, if I can just go to the last page of the revenue document. 323, 328, 164. Total general fund revenues.
Right. I'm a little taken back because that's what the proposed revenue is right on here. But when I'm hearing you also say that you increased the revenue in municipal court traffic fines an extra $180,000, and you're like, well, that's what I'm thinking, that's what it is. I hope, and I've been digging into this book and binder, and I haven't gotten to every department yet. But my hope is that we're being very, I guess, mindful and really putting a number that really seems as close as possible and not using a number to boost the revenue here in the proposed budget and offset expenditures or vice versa, however it works. I am hoping as that I move forward in looking at these numbers, that is not the case by the administration, and that when we were looking at those numbers, it's not just an estimated $180,000 spike in other departments as well.
Okay, through the chair to the counselor. When I sat with the court on the development of their budget, that's when I learned about their new procedure on how they were approaching the collection of tickets. As I said, this is one of the items that I had no trending on, so I can, I will say I was aggressive on this, account as we just went through. As an example, the police department, we were seeing trends with VIN checks. We're seeing trends, so they're based on information. Is the information perfect across the board? No. So conversely, we were talking about some line items where we went down on revenue estimates. So we paid more attention to new programs that yielded potential revenues. I'll be the first one to say, but this is one that I will say with no uncertain terms, I had no basis in terms of where we're going with revenues, just that, we believe revenues will be going up.
The last question that I have on here is because there's a new procedure. I keep hearing their new procedure in the ticketing. Can you elaborate a little bit? What is that new procedure?
I don't believe that there's something new to the court, and Miranda can jump in. References have been made as it relates to owner's liability. Is that correct? And, I mean, that's been in existence for quite some time. Owner's liability, very briefly, is when an individual does not pay a parking ticket and it is doubled and they don't come to court and they are defaulted, and then gives rise to a traffic violation, which is an owner's liability. And as I explained to the people when they come before us in court, when the issuing officer issues the ticket, he doesn't know who is driving the car. So ultimately, to hold someone responsible, if it's ignored, we then go after the owner of the vehicle, flushes them out, they'll come to court and usually address the original underlying parking ticket with assessments and or costs. So there's nothing new. So I'm not sure what's being.
Thank you,
referred
Judge
to.
Coyer, for that clarification. So there's nothing new.
Again, I apologize, when I sat down at the court, it was expressed, it was a new, so that's, in terms of what the increased revenues would be, that was not what I understood, Your Honor, so let me go back to my notes from our session with the session with the municipal court and just double check my notes from that meeting.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you, Chairman. To the director, did you meet with the two people who are sitting next to you to do this budget up at the court, or were there other people involved in the court? I know Elizabeth has something to do with this. I don't know if the prior municipal court judge helps with the budget. I know that I've gone to municipal court before, and there has been discussion about how if the ticket ends up with RITT, there's fees. If it doesn't, we absorb all the fees. I just want to be clear on, there had to be, to come up with this difference, did you not do any kind of a calculation based on the tickets we have now and how they would be?
Through the chair, when I meant on the budget, it wasn't with Judge Coyer, but it was with Miranda. One of the problems that we have on our side is we don't have the receivables in terms of what's outstanding, in terms of, a tax bill. I have the actual receivable. So I predicated, and maybe I misunderstood what was conveyed to me when I met with the court, that it was a new procedure and we're going to see upticks, but it was not with Judge Coyer. It was with Miranda and another judge.
So, Your Honor, you can say in good faith that we can't, if you had to make estimates here, that we cannot hit this number based on whatever we're doing with traffic tickets. You do not foresee us hitting this number.
Hitting the $767,000 figure?
Yes, or the $750,000 based on these traffic fines that may or may not. I think the dispute on the procedure thing is a big problem. We need to figure out what it is, and I don't know if either you or Miranda can explain anything to do with these traffic tickets and how it differs when RITT is involved and when they're not involved. Do we get more money in one of those scenarios, depending on how far this goes?
But to address your first question, the 767,000 total, but I think you said 750,000. I think the other ones include housing, city ordinance, i.e. dog violations. I don't see us getting there in 2025. If to date we are at 410 in the current fiscal. But I can let Miranda explain to you the differential for a ticket that's heard in the municipal court versus one that's heard at the tribunal. If that's your question. and what we get versus what we pay out. Was that your question?
Yeah.
Yep, so if a ticket goes into owner's liability, it's a traffic ticket, like we mentioned. The judge has the option for the defendant to pay on the parking and dismiss the owner's traffic ticket. That way the court gets more money.
Okay, so is that what,
The question was the differential between what we hear at the tribunal versus, what they hear at the tribunal versus if we hear at the municipal court, the sharing of the fines.
so financially, it's more beneficial for us to solve the problem in municipal court? Am I understanding it to forgive something in which it makes us make more money? Is that part of this calculation? I'm just trying to figure out where this extra money came from, because it had to come from somewhere.
I don't know if that calculation, if that was factored in the calculation, but I can say I would gladly, like more tickets to be heard at our municipal court than going over to the tribunal when there's concurrent jurisdiction.
If we can get you a full report on that.
I was just wondering if that's what
That's-
you
Yes, the difference
what you-
between,
and there was like some kind of misunderstanding that made this large sum of money, that we should be able to calculate that off base the current amount of tickets that we
that was
get.
issued, yes.
If they were all just completely heard at municipal court, that a number should be able to be produced from
Yes.
that versus what we send over to the traffic tribunal. And then my other question was, and this is either to Miranda or the chief judge, are building code violations being issued and coming to court, and then they're being forgiven or given more time, or are they, you're not seeing them? This is literally an inspections problem that Councilman Donegan very eloquently said we'll address when we get to inspections, but are you seeing any violations that we are not actually, people aren't ending
We
up
are
paying the
seeing
fine?
violations. Most of them are being continued for corrective action. Not a lot of them get closed out very often.
So we don't actually collect on the fines from the original
Correct.
ones that are being written. Okay, so we have to somehow, we can't, I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that if they're being written and someone's coming and then we're continuing them and they're never being closed out, then we can't completely, it doesn't all go on to inspections because they are writing something and the people are never getting fined and paying a fine because they keep getting corrective action. We have to have some kind of data on that to know what's going to, if people are writing tickets for it, code violations, and they're never being fined, then part of that does lay with the court, in my humble opinion. So we have to figure out what that is, because I agree with Councilman Donegan that this should not be zero. Like there are massive amount of complaints about housing issues, even with what we've seen in the newspaper recently, that if it just gets continued, I mean, we all look bad, and that I don't know that the corrective action's ever taking place. So that's just a whole separate thing, but thank you very much.
If I can address that, please. We do have a dedicated day, Monday, where we hear our housing violations. So we do have a calendar that has those violations on it. My understanding, from having done some myself, as well as with Senior Associate Fort, is that compliance is one of the main concerns from the inspector's office. They will receive a violation. There'll be a fine dollar amount attached to it. And in the spirit of getting them to comply with it, yes, the matter is continued and ultimately may come in front of us at a later date with the representation that compliance has been made. And it seems that the inspector's office is satisfied with that. And I mean, my understanding from discussions with the court staff is that there's a separate, well, I know this is not my understanding, there's a separate solicitor that handles the building inspection violations and works with the inspections office to ultimately get a compliance, and then will come before the court and indicate that compliance is made and that they're not seeking to go forward with prosecution of the matter. So that ultimately results in no fines and or costs being assessed to it. But to Chairman Donegan's and yourself concern, as well as any of the council member here, I think that needs to be looked at again from the court, and I will do that. Because yes, if compliance is made, that's our ultimate goal. But I'm thinking we should at least get some costs associated with it. So it's a discussion that I had earlier that we may revisit.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilman Wall.
I believe this question, I'm not trying to pile on you, Director, but looking at, you had some discussion about the last line on the revenue, all other fines. And you said it was trending. I see it has gone up by, I guess considering the other line, it doesn't seem so big, but it's gone up by $7,000, which that's a significant increase compared to what's on the previous years. And you said it's trending in that direction. Just what's the actual though? I know you budgeted. Okay. So it's a little aggressive as well, I'd say, no?
I'm sorry, sir.
That seems maybe even though it's a smaller figure, that might be a bit aggressive.
In terms of all other, it's 8,000 through February.
So yeah, all right, it's not so bad. It's not that aggressive. Thank you.
Council Vice President Vargas.
Thank you, Chairman. So I just wanted to check, because that number is a little bit higher in the FY '25 in terms of that all other fines, and it's 0. Are you guys adding? You're not adding it in there. You're not adding it to the all others, because there's no way you just.
No, what I'm saying is.
There's
we
no way.
Zeroed out the building. We're not
Right.
not recognize any revenue.
Okay.
And we're looking at that all other as a catch-all for everything else, Council.
So Director, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
As the Director of Finance for the city of Cranston, as a revenue is being generated, the judge has his duty. He's the judge, he's hearing, he's not allocating where the funds are going. That's not what he serves, right? But respectfully, Judge, right? You're on the bench. But Director, you're the finance director. Are you not following the dollars and where the money is actually going from the building code? I guess I'm trying to figure out, is that money not coming in?
Okay, through,
Because it's 0. So when you put the 0,
when I, if I may just answer your direct question, when I did not recognize building code revenues is, and then reset the estimate, building code fines from 6,000 down to this year's budget of 0. That's based on the fact that we're not seeing that revenue come in for that line item, Council. Did I answer your question?
I'm just confused, and honestly, if someone else wants to interpret that or kind of, break it down for me, because it's coming in as 0, so I don't see it under the inspections department. But when you put 0 as the Director of Finance, I'm just wondering, did you not say, how come why am I putting a 0 on there? Why is there not a number? This has to be coming in and funneling through an actual department, and that's what I'm trying to understand.
Okay, through the chair to the council. If the city was to recognize building code fines being receipted in from the court, it would be, one would assume, it would be recognized into 42151. Basic premise of accounting, that's where they would have receipted it in. If a fine was paid on, for no better term, a ticket being issued by the buildings department, it wouldn't be in their department, it would flow through into that account. For FY 24, back to, it's somewhat back to your question you asked, did we just up everybody's revenue? The answer is no. In this particular case, if you crosswalk the February report that was sent out again to all the councils, no revenues are being seen to date under this one line item. Thus, again, we're projecting out that's going to continue into next fiscal year because collections for building code fines are not being recognized or seen this year, nor do we think next year. Then further continuing what the Judge Collier said is, and I think it was the judge or Miranda, that they're continuing cases just trying to get compliance, not to get revenue. Is that how I understood what you were saying, Your Honor?
That's how the cases are presented to us.
So to your point, if we're not going to have a revenue stream, I wasn't going to carry forward last year's estimate of $6,000.
So we receipted it in the past, but not, I hear you in terms of 2025. Okay, thank you.
So if I just may, if we went back on that line item and looked at the budget document, in 21, it was $20,000, 22, 5,000. 23, it dropped to $156. We're not seeing anything to date this year, even though we were, estimating $6,000 for this year. To date through February, not a dollar for those type of fines has been realized. Thus, we dropped it down to 0. If that answers your question. You want?
There any, all right, Councilwoman Renzulli, and then I'm going to ask for last call for questions because I do want to get to fire after this.
Sorry, I didn't get to talk yet.
No, Councilwoman Renzulli.
Oh.
I'd like to.
Thank you. To that point, Your Honor, do you know if the method for doing this was different in, say, a 2021 where we were getting $20,000 in code enforcement fines? Was it different kind of instruction on how we're supposed to deal with these issues? But then again, in 2019, I see zeros for building codes and all other fines, but traffic fines are way up. So I just don't know if there's like a method to the madness, for lack of a better term, for how this works from one year to another. And I don't know if Elizabeth has that answer, having been part of it the whole time, or if the auditor does.
Real quick, I want the budget auditor to provide some historical insight from
I believe in
his
the past,
recollection.
there was some liens put on houses that were bank owned, and the liens were put on for the cleanup and the work that the city had done. And some of the banks, when they went to sell the properties, did satisfy the liens in full. And I believe the year was 21, there was about 18,700 on one alone because it was an eyesore and they did quite a bit of work. And that was payroll, source, equipment, whatever was there. They did a calculation and that lien was put there. That's why that number's so high.
that is not something, a practice that would currently, we. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Ferry.
Your Honor, I just have a very simple yes or no question, two of them. Would you say that the revenue estimate for your budget is overestimated, yes or no? Would you say that the expense estimate, Uh-huh.
Yes.
would you say that the expense estimate is under budgeted, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Honor, Court Administrator Patello, thank you very much. Thank you for being here as well. We appreciate it, city, and thank you for your time.
And on behalf of myself and the court, thank you, Chairman, and all of the members of the Finance Committee, as well as the full council, for your attention to our requests.
Last but not least this evening, we do have and fire alarm. After that, I'll open the floor for public comment on those departments that we've heard this evening, and then we'll go back to the ordinance 032402. Chief, good evening. Thank you for being with us. Can you hear me? Yep, okay. The same sentiment that I said to Chief Winquist and members of the police department, I think I speak for everyone when I say we're fortunate to have the fire department that we do here in the city of Cranston. I think we have the best department in the state. We appreciate what every member of the department does every day to put their life on the line to keep our city safe. So thank you. We'll start. So we're on group 1200. This is fire department. We're going to start on the expense side. We'll then move over to the revenue side. Then after that, we'll do fire alarm, expense, and revenue. I want to start off with the kind of combining. If we look at salary and overtime, if you combine the two, they're going down, which stuck out to me. So especially with overtime running at least annualized about $650,000 over. And yet that's being reduced by 1.2 million. So I just wanted to, how are numbers going down for next year?
Through the chair to the counselor, as I believe the chief will say, we are going into putting on a class of 18 which will come out and be on trucks. Date certain, chief, I have to apologize. I got to do. Yeah, chief. Third.
They'll be on the trucks, the third week of July. They're in their second week. They started March 25th.
So if I just may continue on that line, this, to the best of my knowledge, will be the highest complement of firefighters since I have been here. Now, one of the things in developing the budget with the fire department, overtime, new employees have a administrative benefit that they don't have the benefit time that our more seasoned firefighters come with in terms of, drivers on what you have for overtime. employee benefit time is one of the biggest, their time off is a big factor. That coupled with, the need because you have fresh bodies. And then the third factor with the overtime reduction is the salary differential between the firefighters in offices that were, coming out of service and backfilling it with new recruits. So those multiple factors, are the driver, focus where you focus on the overtime, sir.
And is it to the police, where those recruits, those 18 recruits, they're already built into this budget book?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, Counselor, I'd like to highlight, similar to the question you posed with the police department, the new recruits, are at a substantially lower salary than both if they were a firefighter or an official, that retired that we're filling with the 18, sir.
Thank you. On line item 53017, medical supplies. The 24 budget was 165. The proposal for fiscal year 25 is 170. Looking at the actuals for this year, it's running at 83,000, which annualizes to 125. So it's running at 125. The 5 closed fiscal years most previously averaged to 150. So I'm wondering what the increase is for.
If I just may, Counselor, I want to say, and let me just triple check this. The departmental request was higher than this 170 after consultation back and forth with the chief. We backed it down. I'm going to credit it to, utilization, where you were saying it was trending. I'm assuming you're doing a straight line projection. Yeah. And again, it's based on what you have to buy. I will, say with no certain terms, this was a line item that the original request by the department was higher. We reduced it, based on the budget, we were trying to finalize and that trend.
Are there, I guess, to the chief, are there specific purchases or expenses that you anticipate in fiscal year 25 for that increase?
Well, medical supplies are going up, like you wouldn't know, it's, like everything's going up, but so medical supplies are going up. It costs us a lot just for, gloves. It costs us like $5,000 for a pallet of gloves. And, between the rescues and the engines, so we go through quite a bit of them. So we're anticipating, increase in runs and supplies.
Thank you. On the injured, it's line 53503, injured on duty, Blue Cross. The proposal by the mayor is 200,000. That's a decrease of 150,000. I assume the decrease is the expectation that some will be coming off IOD?
Through the chair, yes, including retirements once they go out, if we force people to a retirement status. So the answer is, to your chair, to your question is yes.
I'm sorry, the last question I have is on line item 53506, training programs. The proposal is 40,000. The 2024 actuals are 12,500. So annualized just under 19,000, and the historical average is 28. So there's, it seems that at least to that $40,000 number, it's relatively underutilized. So I'm wondering if there's room for movement on that for fiscal year 25. Just given historical and present utilization.
If I may, Counselor, again, this is another one where the original departmental request was higher. We backed it, for no better term, backed them down to back to the 40,000. One thing I learned with the fire department training, especially when you have new recruits, is imperative. So, one would say could, based on just straight lining it, could we have backed that line item off? Yes. But again, with other adjustments with the fire department, that's one for, say, okay, if I look at last year's for the full year with 33,000, going to 40 wasn't a stretch in terms of a budgetary line item. It's a judgment call, if I may. Do we want to take training out of the fire department? And
I'm not suggesting that number be
yeah, and what I'm saying
zero
is,
or anywhere close to that.
the
but-
development of any budget, I can say they lobbied or they requested more. I kept it level funded, and on, a department like that, I'd rather err on the side of caution.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee on fire department expenses? Council Budgeter DeMayo.
How many current firefighters are on IOD that we're trying to transfer to the state pension? And there is any anticipation that we may get a few of those to the state pension before the end of this budgetary period?
We have between 14, 15 IODs. We have between 14, 15 IODs. Some of them are long-term, some of them have had their court cases. They've been denied. So now they're appealing it, which gives them another date and time for another court case. We have whittled it down. We were quite high before. We were up to in the upper 20s, and now we're down to 14, 15. So we're making an accomplishment on the IODs.
Thank you, Chief.
Councilman Paplaskas.
Yeah, I have a real small question. There's an $8,000 expense from the 2024 budget for homeland security. And I see nothing budgeted for this year, but there was nothing budgeted in the past. I just can't remember what that $8,000 expense was for last year, and just curious if we need to spend that money again this year. It's line item 53014, I think, but my whole punch went right through it.
1-4, that's correct, Counselor. Okay, again, last year, the budget was 15, that we didn't spend, I'm speaking FY 23. Didn't spend any money on that line item this year. Through, we haven't spent a dime on that, so I don't know, legacy-wise, you're talking going back to 22, I don't know what they spent it on, but that was one of the first things that came out of their budget.
Okay, thank you.
Council Vice President.
Thank you. Chief, good evening. So, again, so I'm just going to piggyback. I have a question, but now that you brought that up, Council Papalaskis, so Chief, are you okay with that line item being zero? I'm just double checking. The only reason why I'm asking is, well, you go ahead and answer, and then I can.
I expected some cuts in my budget.
Okay.
Tom and I had talked it over. And these are some of the things that he and myself had decided on.
Hazardous materials. I know that went down to $25,000. I note here what the hazardous materials on our binders, what it's used for. Some departments across the country are finding ways on how to also dispose lithium batteries that are becoming very, very, no longer rare and becoming more and more day to day a hazard for fire departments in terms of how to dispose of a lithium battery. Is that hazardous materials, lithium batteries also included in there? Is that like, how do you? I've seen some departments. How do you currently get rid of it, I guess, should be my question. And is there any expense to the city? And if so, would it come out of that line item?
Well, we go put the fires out as best we can with lithium batteries. It's a different kind of fire to extinguish. We don't take the batteries with us, so they're left there until the state comes in and disposes it a certain way.
Okay, so where there's either a policy or based on your leadership, we just say we're not taking it, let the state handle that and they take it with them.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. My other question was on the, well, let's see, John asked the Blue Cross. Sorry, I don't have my little notes over here. The safer, so are we getting any safer grant at all when you were talking about those, is that what you guys were talking about in terms of the group coming in?
The 18
Yep.
is a safer grant class that started, I want to say, I wish Chief Mancini, March of 23. That grant runs 3 years, so it'll be March of 26. So this is net of the safer grant, which is up on the revenue side, the safer grant and a couple of other grants. So if you look at the fire revenue, that's a safer grant plus a couple of other grants that the fire department has. And again, on the expense side, those firefighters are in here at 100% of their expense on the expense side.
Okay, got it. That's why that line item is 0 now at grant match funds.
Yeah, and once again, with that, that wasn't a safer one, but if they had another grant that they had to have a match, it would be put in there. There is not one right now that requires a match.
Fair enough. And then are we still paying for the EMT certification where we're bringing in a new firefighter? And what line item would that fall under on here, under the expenditures?
That's going to be, I want to say, I don't know, but yes, it is in here, the training that you guys had.
Yes, the training, we are responsible to pay for the EMTC. Right now I have 18, I have 11 of them that already have their EMTC, so I'll be sending probably 7 of them to school when they finish this training. I think their EMTC school start in September-ish. And it's like $2,800 a candidate.
Yeah,
But
it's not
again,
cheap.
back to, giving the fire department some latitude in not cutting training programs, that's the type of stuff where, this department, we erred on the side of caution where we could on certain line items.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions on the expense side? Councilman Ferry.
Thank you. Chief, I just, first of all, I want to congratulate you on your new job, and I know you're doing a great job because you have embraced this passionately. If I were the chief of the fire department right now, and I'm not, and I could never be, I think I'd be a little uneasy thinking that I'd have to run this department with $2.5 million less than the year before, when you're going to be hiring 18 more people, how are the expenses going to go down $2.5 million?
Well, when I go to full staff at 196, right now I'm paying overtime for 18 positions. Okay, so once I have those 18 on staff, 196, I won't be paying overtime in those positions anymore. So my overtime budget was cut from 5.5 to 4.25. So they cut my overtime budget 1.25.
So you're pretty sure that this estimated budget of overtime is a realistic number?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Like I say, we haven't been to full staff in years. We've always been running short. And we have kept 5 to 7 spots contractual open for overtime, like the police have. So we're not going to be doing that right now. We're going to full staff at 196.
Because the last thing we would want would be to running into the last quarter of the next fiscal year and seeing that $35 million, $843 number is not realistic. So it's important. This is too important for the number not to be right.
I think we've done the math on this and we've sat and we've talked it over and, you know, to be down 18 positions and pay overtime in those spots versus putting on 18 and those spots are filled, we're not going to be paying overtime in those spots. So there's the difference there.
Thank you.
All right, moving to the revenue side. One question I have, and I think based on prior answers this evening, I think I know what the response is going to be from Director Zadelis. But on line item line item 43103, plan review application. That's proposed at a $60,000 increase to $100,000. Annualized through February for fiscal year 24 is, projecting at 68,000. And that's the $68,000 number. That's kind of around where the past 5 years are. So is that due to what you foresee as increased kind of development and projects within the city?
Through the chair, it's not only yes, the answer is yes, and it's a type of projects that the fire department, reviews. So the short answer is yes.
Are there any other questions on the revenue side? I'll ask one other FEMA reimbursement that is running, I know, budget 24, it's at $500,000. To date, we've received $138,000. There's no change in that number for the fiscal year 2025 year. Is that like a set number where we just haven't received reimbursement yet? Or is that something that is there a variable there or is it fixed?
Through the chair to the council. So if I can just recap what you just said. In FY 23, we had a $500,000 estimate. To date, we've received 137. Going into next fiscal year, we are carrying 0 in the mayor's proposed budget, 0. I will say with no uncertain terms, the actual $500,000 number was mistaken, if I can explain it. The original COVID money before the ARPA money, the city had a very high receivable on the books. Unbeknownst to myself when I got in here, the actual receivable was paid. And the one problem is the accounting of it. We had accrued the receivable So thus, when the money came in, it should have reduced the receivable. They charged it in FY 23 as revenue, never reducing the receivable. When we factored the when we were formulating the FY 24 budget, we saw a substantial, it was 750, I think it was 750,000 due from the federal government. We thought we were being conservative, putting it in there for 500,000. Come to find out, let's call it an accounting error, that had been paid to us and never reduced the receivable. That was the original, I can't even remember the name of the program that FEMA had, where you were submitting for firefighters' salaries. So there is no, unless something new comes in, whether it be flooding, we are not anticipating any FEMA public assistance outside of SAFER.
Thank you. Line 43108. That is, that's staying the same at 50,000 for fiscal year 25. The actuals to date are 13,000, which annualizes to just under 20,000. So there's a $30,000 difference there between where this year's projecting and what next year we're proposing. I just wanted to.
Noted, Counselor. No, you're right. And that's one that I did not adjust downward. But yeah, if you just straight lined it, you know, that's one that one could say, you know, you can reduce that line item on a revenue side, and then we'd have to make a corresponding cut on the expense side somewhere, whether it be in the fire department or another city department. But in Counselor, if it may, you know, there are other ones that if you go look and say, oh, you know, their estimates at a time, some are understated if you straight line it. So I'm just, you know, picking up one that may be, you know, overstated. You're not grabbing other ones that may be understated. So I'm just saying it's a balancing act, sir.
No, I understand and I appreciate the honesty. Are there any other questions on Council President?
Thank you, Councilman Donegan. Thank you, Chief, this evening. Same for your department. Thanks for keeping us safe and risking your lives every day for the greater community. I just had a question more for Director Zadelis. I may have missed it, but where in the revenue is the line item for the rescue runs?
Okay, that's in a, give me a second if I could.
It's under Group 00, line item 41521, third party rescue Medicaid, and then there's line item 41522, third party rescue. They're both under taxes, state aid, and general revenues.
Which group number, John?
0000. It's like the first one
It's up
right at the
top.
front of
Okay,
the
that's
book.
why, okay. Did the reimbursement rate increase for that, right? For the state, Medicaid, Medicare?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it did.
And that's captured accurately in the projected?
We show an increase in the revenue. That's correct.
Okay.
I believe it goes from, if you go up to that,
Got it. And how is that tracking to date, Director Zadelis?
I don't know when that increase went in. It was subsequent. The conversation, I want to say it was subsequent to November when we were made aware of it. We are trending. Okay, $1 million through February. And again, I think the commencement date was January or November,
Mhm.
where actual is 2 million, almost $2 million on the third-party rescue on the revenue side.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? See, Councilwoman Jermaine.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Chief. So I haven't had a chance to meet you personally. So I want to congratulate you for taking this service for the community. I don't really have a big question, but I want to acknowledge that your department is not only keep us safe, but save life. I experienced it myself. If it wasn't for the diligence of the fire department here in Queenstown, my husband would not be alive right now. So it is a testimony of the work that the fire department is doing here. And I want to thank all of them, all of the firefighter every day when they call. My husband would have died if you were not efficient. So please tell your colleague the work they are doing, they are saving lives. My 3 children are thankful to you, to the service we're doing. So my last question, I think Council Ferry asked you that question. Are you 100% sure you have everything you need to do this work for the community?
Yes, I'm confident in this budget, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we are going to transition to fire alarm. It's group number 1201. I don't believe they have anything on the revenue side, right? Yeah. This budget is remaining unchanged. The one, I do have question on 2 line items. The first being line item 53111. Just kind of looking at it from a straight line, it's proposed at $130,000, which is the same budget as it was last year. It's annualized running at 120. The historical average is 109. Why remain at 130?
Mr. Chairman, again, similar to what we were talking about, an overarching request from the department. Yes, they are trending lower. And in terms of computerization, one of the things that they are actually looking to do is to upgrade as we transition into the capital budget. The fire has a request, and I'm doing this from memory, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, $500,000 that was originally in the chief's ask for FY '25 to replace aging equipment and capabilities. We, in terms of formulating the capital budget, deferred that request to FY '26. And because their computers, their equipment is going to be a year older next year, we, in spite of the trend that we're seeing, their request was to actually increase this line item. Again, working with the chief, we backed it down to keep it level funding, which is, for all actuality, a increase over what we expect their expense to be this year. So it's one of those judgment calls in formulating a budget with additional requests from the department. You know, you may see it as a straight line, but in talking with, the chief and his staff, it's in bringing to their attention that your spend isn't for the current year isn't in line. We recognize they do have older, systems that, again, are gonna need to be replaced and will be addressed in the FY 26 capital budget.
To that same question on 2 line items down, 53113, traffic signal repairs, that's proposed again at 85,000. Actuals to date are less than $5,000. And from fiscal year 19 to 23, the average is $33,000. So there is even if that was 100% to what the historical average is, there's a $50,000 difference.
And Counselor, in terms of this, if you were to propose a budget cut on that, what I would have to do, right, and globally, because the department can shift amongst departmental line items, I would, again, the request was higher than that. We level funded them, because conversely, if you were gonna say, you didn't give them, this one other line item, we just kept them whole, line item to line item. That is one line item where their expenses were not trending, but, upkeep of the console, would be another one that I would say, if you talk to them, we'd have needs there that we didn't give them, their increase. So is that line trending under, what was budgeted? Yes. Can I tell you with what they're gonna do this fiscal year into next fiscal year, with their equipment, what the effect is? I can't tell you that right now, sir.
Thank you. Are there any other Council Vice President?
So Chief, the equipment that you have now, and that you're going to replace possibly for FY 26, what kind of equipment is that? Is that the dispatch alerting radio system, or what kind of system are you looking to bring to the 21st century? Because I'm sure that technology that you have is probably very antiquated. And so I didn't know whether it was like a radio alarming system, some sort of dispatch system.
It's a radio alarm system. They are 9 years old, so there's a lifespan on everything. Eventually, they're gonna have to be replaced. Hopefully, they'll last another year. The switches are very expensive to replace. Can't get some parts on some of them, from what I was told from the superintendent. So hopefully, we can get one more year out of them.
Thing for us to be alarmed, I guess.
No, everything works.
Okay.
Everything works well now. But we're just looking down the road. Everything has a timestamp on it.
Okay. Have you approached by any chance any type of potential grant on those alerting system at all? I know that we're getting, you're looking into it. I just didn't know if that was conversation that whether you or perhaps the administration could have in terms of maybe looking for potential funding for that alerting system, given the fact we want to update it and stuff's falling apart. We can't find part.
The only public safety equipment potential we're looking for is they've identified on a federal level on the police side, and I have not heard anything on the fire side for equipment personally.
Okay. And so is that the upkeep of the council? Is that what the line item would potentially be used for? Like if you would have to replace a system, which line item would that come out of?
Okay, if we're going to replace the system, the recommendation is going to be, it will be a capital expense. The current line items that you have before you generally are to maintain or in barring an exception that we have to run out and buy a sudden switch, as the chief was talking about. A single switch it should be capitalized because the switches can run 10 to 15 years, and we would issue the debt on a capital program to match 10 or 15 years. But the line item, computer maintenance and repairs, would be the normal line item that if we had to buy a switch, it would come out of.
Okay. All right. And you said it would have to come out of the capital budget?
We're proposing that the upgrade, that the all-inclusive upgrade, the $500,000 that the chief is contemplating right now, that was not included, recommended for the FY25 budget, that is being, was moved out a year to FY26, is contemplated. The chief's upgrades, the grand 21st century that you refer to, is being contemplated right now as a expenditure on the capital side for something that big.
Okay. And my last question is that radio maintenance, I'm not sure if it's the radio maintenance or under the upkeep of council. When you communicate through your radios, it goes through a radio system and an antenna or some sort of a system and plays through the tower that's placed throughout the entire city. Excuse me?
No, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes.
Director, okay. Chief, I'm assuming the chief would know a little bit more about this, no disrespect, Director. Are those systems, is that the systems you're also trying to replace in addition to any other system?
I think if you
place?
got that capital budget in 26, we would upgrade everything.
Everything
So
at the
everything
same
would brand
time?
new. Yeah, we could go to state of the art. Like I say, everything's 9 years old, 10 years old right now. So when you replace something, you want to replace it all. That way it all matches, it all works well.
Yeah, okay. Is that the same radio system that the police is on, or are you guys just on the fire one? In terms,
Police have their own frequency.
their own antennas?
So we're in the middle of doing active shooter training. We're going to be starting on that this summer. So we're going to get our communications together a lot more. So we'll be using 800s. So we won't be going to dispatch, their dispatch to our dispatch to let us know what's going on. We're going to be working together on scene, talking to each other. So there's no delayed response.
Got it. Okay. Great, thank you. And my last question is, I know this is fire alarm, but I'm not sure if this is relevant here or not, but I'll ask it either way. In terms of like the fire alarm systems in our city buildings, is that something that's under your budget, or is that in a different budget at all? For sprinklers or anything along those lines, an alarm system?
Building, yeah. So anything in the city buildings is under buildings budget.
And then fire extinguishers as well and replacements and all that, that's not under fire alarm, right? That's separate, that would be under your fire department?
That
Or
would
is
be
that-
our fire department.
Under the, okay, not the fire, okay, the other group, sorry to confuse you, okay, okay, right, thank you, chief.
There any other questions on fire alarm? Councilman Paplaskas.
I have a fire department question, but it's specific. Okay, is it okay to ask? It's actually the fire department capital budget. Is that okay? I know we have capital budget another night.
Sure.
We I'm gonna have to ask legal, are we,
Capital budget's not advertised for tonight.
Even though it falls under the fire department.
The expenditure falls under capital budget.
So chief, will you be here capital budget night to answer questions on your fire department? I hate to have you come back another night.
All right, so you're gonna ask me some capital
I
budgets?
can't, I was just told I
All right,
can't.
okay. Well, we can do it another time.
All right, I'll send you an email. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions on fire alarm, then we can to let the chief go for this evening. Okay, that portion of the meeting is now closed. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on the police department, animal control, harbor master, municipal court, fire department, or fire alarm budgets, expenditures, or revenues? Anyone in public? Seeing none. Tom, is there anyone online?
There's no public comment.
All right, public comment on section 4 of the docket is now closed. We do have an ordinance before us. It is ordinance 24-02, minimum wage. This is an ordinance and amendment of Title II of the Code of the City of Cranston, 2005, entitled Administration and Personnel, Minimum Wage, sponsored by myself and Councilwoman Germain. At this time, we'll entertain a motion. Director Zadelis. Not so fast. All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
No, we,
Second.
someone's got to make a mo, I know it's late, guys.
Motion to approve. Second.
All right. Really briefly, about 3 years ago, we passed an ordinance that set a minimum wage for the city of Cranston for city work, for employees of the city. This does not apply to the school department. This does not apply to the libraries. This doesn't apply to private businesses. This is only for what the city will pay city employees. And really, it really only applies to people that fall outside of collective bargaining. It could be a part-time worker at the senior center, someone working at the Parks and Rec department seasonally. And the proposal here is it would change the minimum wage from $12.75 to $15 an hour starting January 1, which is what the state minimum wage is going to be starting in 2025 and January 1. And it also removes an exemption of where previously the minimum wage ordinance in the city did not apply to high school students. So if you were a high school student working at summer camp on Doric Avenue, the hypothetically, the city could pay you less. And honestly, where this came from was it was a conversation with my students, and they were a couple of them were telling me about how they get paid less at the seasonal job they have. They work at a summer camp, and I said, they were like, "Yeah, it's messed up." I'm like, "Yeah, that is messed up." So I wanted to try and make the change. I don't know what the fiscal impact would be, so I would like to formally request, make a motion to request a fiscal impact note for the, what month is it? For the May Finance Committee meeting.
So moves.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion for a fiscal note, to request a fiscal note? It's not May 1st. Is it May 6th?
yes. In terms of, the request for a fiscal note by May 6th, it will be on the record. I'm sorry, the council is gonna stand up. But yes, sir.
Councilman.
I just have one question. Tom, I don't even know when you sleep. I come by here on Saturdays and your car's here and I know you're working on the budget nonstop. Can you get that done by May 6th? And I'm not trying to slow this down at all. I'd like to vote on it, but I know you're overworked.
In the one issue is I've got to reach out to departments, I've been given a deadline. It's gonna be dependent on the information, the numbers, as an example, the parks. What were the assumptions, how many people? So, I will tell in advance if I don't have it for the May 6th. I'll let the council know, but that's why I asked the question with everything else we have going. Give me a date and I'll swing back to them. And if I'm not gonna hit that May 6th, I will let them know before the May 6th meeting.
Thank you.
So the motion on the floor right now is to formally request a fiscal note. The motion is to approve that request for a fiscal note. Clerk, please take a roll.
All right, hold on. Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine? Yes. Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas?
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas? Councilman Donegan? Council President Marino?
Yes.
I would ask for the motion to approve to be withdrawn so we can make a motion to continue to next month.
I withdraw my motion to approve.
Do we have a motion to continue?
Motion to continue.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to continue? Seeing none, clerk, please take a roll.
Councilman Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jermaine? Yes. Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Councilman Paplaskas?
Yes.
Councilman Wall,
Yes.
Council Vice President Vargas? Councilman Donegan? Council President Marino?
Before we adjourn, is there any, are there any members of the public that wish to speak on ordinance 032402? The floor is yours? No? Okay. Any members online that wish to speak?
I see no public comment.
All right. Seeing there's no public comment, we'll close that portion of the meeting. No further business before us. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any opposed or any discussion?
All of
Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.